We all know what hunger is. When I read this reading last week, I usually read them a week ahead of time. My mind went back to a time when I was hungry. We had just landed in Costa Rica, and it was late at night, and we checked into our hotel after we found that there were no street signs in Costa Rica, at least not then. We checked into the hotel, looking forward to our room and a restaurant. And the attendant says, there's no restaurant here. It was like after 10 o'clock. I said, well, how about in the neighborhood? He said, oh, you don't want to go out there. We're checking into your hotel and we don't want to go outside. No, you don't want. He said, the only thing is down the block, there's a little 7-Eleven. I said, oh, something like come back home. He says, yeah, but you got to be careful. But we were hungry. There's 3 of us. We were hungry. So we made our way to 7-Eleven, and outside 7-Eleven, this gave us an indication of the safety factor. There were police with machine guns. What are you protecting in 7-Eleven? I couldn't imagine. So one stayed in the car, one really observed, and one of us ran in and bought whatever we could buy. Wraps, things like that, okay? Talk about manna in the desert. What is it? I didn't know what I was eating. But we ran back into the car, got back to the hotel, and ate our supper with water. You're in the desert. You just left horrible conditions. You're following the leadership of Moses. And you're hungry. There's no 7-Eleven. So they say to Moses, why did you lead us out here? We could have been in Egypt eating there. We got 3 squares and a bed. It was a mat, maybe made of straw, but we were there. Now we're in a desert. There's no food, there's no drink, there's nothing. So what does Moses do? He goes like you and I would do. We go to God. God always answers us. And God told Moses, calm them down. Things will happen. At night, you'll get food, and in the morning, you'll have food. At night, there is a tree that was popular in that area of the world at that point, that at night emitted like a low, kind of syrupy, flaky substance. But really, it emitted that after the insects had eaten of the leaves of that tree. So what you had on the ground was excrement. But they didn't think of it that way, not yet. Then the quail, they're on the Sinai, were flying back from their migration period, and there were little birds, and they rested on Sinai. They just stopped. Easy to catch. So now you had the quail, they can easily cook them, but the manna, the stuff, you know, the scriptures are trying to be nice, and they say, well, the Israelites said, what is it, Moses? They probably said, I'm in church, so I'm going to clean it up. They probably said, what the heck is that? You want us to eat that? And Moses said, yeah, pick it up, squeeze it, play with it. And sure enough, they could eat it like crackers, like bread. Manna, not what they envisioned a meal to be made of. And they questioned it. Now, we know what hunger is, physical hunger. But I think our world today is far more hungry than for food. Oh, there are plenty of nations and areas of our world that hunger for food, and we as Christians have an obligation. But let's look at this whole message, because Jesus is saying that the bread from the Father is right here in front of you, talking to you himself. So there's something else in the scriptures today about this bread that he's going to feed us. And I think in our world today, there's a great hunger and a need for development of consciousness. So we don't just reach out and fill ourselves up on the first thing that comes down the pike. And you've seen that in our country in the last few years. The number of movements and developments that have passed over our culture, category woke. You know what I'm talking about. And people have been so hungry for meaning and meaningful experiences with he who they don't even know yet, that they latched on, and many still latch on. Some of them have come and gone. Some of them use excuses, well, you know, all people are the same, so therefore let's burn down the cities that don't agree with us. Women don't have enough rights, so therefore let's doubt every man in the world because he's a misogynist. And the woke philosophy is very popular because it's immediate gratification. I become God, the individual. And who feeds me? I feed myself on the philosophy of the day. We've seen that. And we have to, as Catholics, we have to be very careful and aware of that in our society. Otherwise, we can get swept away with the philosophies of the day, whatever they are, and maybe more will come down the pike. We don't know. We're here because we're searching for value. We're searching to satisfy the hunger of our souls, not our stomachs only. Yeah, that's normal. You know what that is. But meaning. And there are so many people whose souls are empty. They hunger. And because of the desperation of their hunger, they reach out for anything. And yet, Jesus is standing right in front of us and said, you know, what you're longing for is right here. The Father sent the bread of life. Hello, he's right here. But people don't regard that as the answer. You see, the problem is in our society, I think we are trying, excuse me, I don't want to say we, many people are trying to make God in their image, not respecting the fact that we're made in God's image. And God sent us his greatest gift, his Son, to nourish us, to give us direction, to show us the way, to deepen our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with God. But that takes too much trouble. I'd rather protest, I'd rather carry banners, make trouble, pronounce false doctrines, because that's easy. And talk about manna, what is it? What the hell is that all about, I want to say? Because that's what the Israelites were saying. What is it? You're asking us, this is Israelites to Moses, you're asking us to put our faith in Yahweh and eat this stuff and be nourished on it? And Jesus, on the night before he died, did that to you and me. He asked us to eat what he gave us at that Last Supper. And he calls it my body. He gives us, this is God's Son in the flesh, giving us himself. And when we gather here, any day of the week, or we come to pray before the Blessed Sacrament, any day, any hour, we are in communion with God's only Son, Jesus. Before Mass, such a beautiful church, a lot of people go by and they make a sign of the cross, they genuflect, they make a sign of reference. Appropriate. Because here resides in the Blessed Sacrament the Son of God, the Word made flesh, your brother, my brother, Jesus Christ. And Jesus asks us basically, and I think there's a very beautiful song that was paraphrasing this, look beyond. Look beyond what you see, just like the Israelites had to look beyond the excrement that was, what is it, the manna. Look beyond it. See the whole message. Listen to the whole message. Eat the whole message. And Jesus at the Last Supper is basically telling us to begin that journey toward the Father by looking beyond what he gives us. Because his body is our entrance into heaven. His blood is our nurturing. He's telling us, come, look beyond the physical elements, but respect them because in them he gave us his body and blood. It's called Thanksgiving, the Eucharist, Eucharistica, gathering to give thanks to God for what he has given us. The Israelites eventually did that. They thanked God, but semi-sincerely. We're not talking about the Israelites, we're talking about us, because they are our ancestors. Do we give thanks to God for what he does for us? His presence is available to us. We're struggling for meaning in our society. We've always been struggling for meaning since the beginning of time, because we were challenged to look beyond and see God in our lives. Not put meaning in me and I make the rules. No, we're part of the body of Christ. So we're asked to look beyond and look within ourselves and realize that the intense searching and longing that all of us have, and you know what, let me stop right there for a second. You might say, oh, I don't have any intense longing. If you love one person, ever loved one person, you are sharing in God. As Paul says, live in Jesus and let Jesus live in you. So if we love, we're sharing in the presence of God, who is love. So we have a direction for that meaning in our lives. And it begins with love. And the nurturing of that love is here at this table. Jesus feeding us himself. And there was a while, I guess the Jews had a problem with it, maybe the Romans had a problem with it, the idea of a man, Jesus, giving us his flesh to eat, all that nonsense. But we understand it sacramentally. We're not biting Jesus' arm. We're eating his whole body in the Eucharistic presence of bread and wine. And that nourishment comes from God himself. The Father has sent us this gift. We're challenged to look beyond and look to the Eucharist as the source and summit of meaning in our lives. Where does that come from? How do we connect with it? Prayer. Prayer. It's not a charm. Prayer. And prayer is love talk to God. Whether it's talk over needs, or thanks, or anger, or petition, it's love talk to God. And the love talk to God comes to us through the Eucharist. The immediate connection, the Eucharist, which is the source and summit of our lives and meaning. Sure, they were hungry, and they were satisfied with quail and manna. What is it? What satisfies us? Does the Eucharist satisfy us? And if it hasn't satisfied us enough, prayer will give us a sense of appreciation. Because prayer puts us in contact with the Creator, with Jesus' own Father and our Father. Communion, coming together, increases our spirituality and meaningfulness inside of us that in this world is missing. Here's the meaning. Here's the meaningfulness. Here's the source and summit of our faith in thanksgiving, the Eucharist. He fed them, and they were nourished. He feeds us. Do we appreciate it?